Welcome to Tripping Over the Ottoman. I'm David Van Deusen.
And I'm Abby Ryder. And we are two super fans from different generations that deep dive into episodes of the one thing that unites us.
And that is the Dick Van Dyke Show. But first, a little bit about us, since this is our first podcast together.
If you're a fan of the Dick Van Dyke Show, you may know David Van Dusen already. He is the longtime editor and publisher of the Walnut Times, which is a popular newsletter devoted to the Dick Van Dyke Show. And he also most recently wrote and produced a documentary about the show called Celebrating the 60th Anniversary, which you can find on YouTube if you'd like to watch it. He is also the author of a book called Twilo and Beyond: My Walnut Adventures with the Dick Van Dyke Show cast. And in this book, he details his ongoings as he meets and forms friendships and forms relationships with many of the cast and crew of the show over the years. He's also an invaluable expert and consultant for many of the projects related to the show. And I think you're really going to enjoy David's very specific insights into the world of the show that he has from his experience.
Well, don't sell yourself short here, Abby, because Abby is a couple of decades behind me in age, but she's also a fellow superfan nonetheless. Abby has studied research in the performing arts. She's worked as a librarian previously and is also an artist and writer, and she knows an awful lot about this show as well. So we invite you to join us today for our first podcast. I'm David.
I'm Abby, and today we're going to be deep diving, having an in depth discussion of one of my personal favorite episodes of the
And mine
show.
too.
Oh, good, good, good. I was going to ask you what your rating might be. The Great Petrie Fortune,
Yes,
which
a great episode.
it's one of my favorites. Yeah, if you were going to give this a rating, A to F kind of rating, like what would your personal rating be for it?
Yeah, it's near the top. I mean, there's a lot of good stuff in this episode. A lot of funny scenes. I mean, there's almost very specific parts throughout the episode. It's almost like a triparter in terms of the different things that fans of the show remember about what goes on in this episode.
Absolutely, absolutely. It's one of my favorites. I always wonder, this episode seems to have all the things that I enjoy in my life, and I always wonder what it was it the chicken or the egg? Which came first? Did I see the episode and then develop these things, or did I not? A lot of things, riddles and puzzle solving and history and going through artifacts, those are all things I enjoy. So I really, really, really like this episode.
Yeah, so Abby and I are going to share our thoughts about the episode, and if you are a Dick Van Dyke Show fan, we want you to participate. Um, we'll have an opportunity to leave comments as part of our podcast after we're done. We'd appreciate your thoughts and your feedback. Um, but I think we're excited to share our insights and our favorite spots of what happens in this episode. The Great Petrie Fortune. This is a season 5 episode that we're starting with, almost near the end of the series. But it is nonetheless a great episode. Many unique moments. So
Absolutely, absolutely. And I feel like this episode touches on a lot of the same patterns we see in all of the episodes. So it's kind of a good, if you were going to introduce somebody to the show, I think it's a good one to introduce with too. So
what is interesting to look at when you look at various episodes is when they were filmed compared to
hmm
when they aired, and also if we have hints when they were started to be written, which is also insightful, depending on what you find out. Now, in this case, um, the Great Petrie Fortune aired in October of 1965, near the end of the month, October 27, was filmed over a month earlier, September 9th of 65. But Abby and I have done some research and discovered that the initial script draft of this was done back in May of that same year, right? So several months ahead.
yeah.
Um, and for the benefit of those listening who probably know what the episode is about, we've also done some research and dug up 3 different episode synopses that have appeared in TV Guide and other places throughout the year. So the first synopsis says Rob inherits an old roll top desk from his late great uncle Hezekiah that contains wealth of some sort hinted at in a song. Interesting, right?
So simple.
Another description says Rob discovers he's the heir to a mysterious fortune that's hidden somewhere in his uncle Hezekiah's roll top desk. And the third is short and sweet. Rob's uncle dies and leaves him a valuable desk and a riddle. And that's what you were talking about,
Yeah,
Abby, right?
yeah.
The riddle.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm glad they mentioned that in that synopsis. I feel like that's a key part of the whole episode. So
Yeah.
that's really cool.
I think, you know, as most fans know, this episode, like so many after the second season, was directed by Jerry Paris.
Yeah. I actually looked up, he's actually directed almost half of the Dick Van Dyke Show episodes when I did the math, which I didn't know that. I hadn't made that mathematical in my head yet, but very cool.
Yeah, Jerry was after Carl Reiner for the longest time.
He begged me for a year or two, let me direct. And it's very hard for other actors that you've worked with to think of you as a director when, especially, he was a goofy guy. He was funny and he didn't look like he was a responsible kind of guy, and he turned out to be a sensational director. Because I remember when I came to the cast and I said, Jerry's going to direct, they said, really? And they questioned it for a minute, and then the second week and the third week they said, we want Jerry all the time. So Jerry did most of our shows after that.
The thing that folks would say about Jerry was the nicest of guys, but he had no filter on his
Yes.
mouth. Apparently,
Yes.
whatever he thought came out of his mouth, and that
Yes.
sometimes could take people back.
I saw an interview with him recently on YouTube. It was, I can't remember. I think it was with gosh, it escapes me now, but it was it was a late night talk show, and he had an interview, and you're right, there was no filter and everything was sort of just spilling out, but it was really fun to watch. So I recommend looking him up because he's yeah, kind of a character, you know.
It was second season around the time of the It May Look Like a Walnut episode where Jerry actually directed that episode. But that's where he started it. And Carl shared in later years that once Jerry got in there and folks really liked him and got comfortable with him, then he was the director that everybody wanted. They wanted to have Jerry, be the director.
I'm always in awe too that he was in a lot of the episodes he directed. Like, I find that really, that would seem so difficult. I find that really cool.
And of course, he went on in later years to do Happy Days and
Yes.
The Odd Couple and many others. Sadly, we lost Jerry too young in his life from a brain tumor. But fortunately, we have these episodes and all the work that he's done to still remind us of what a great guy he was.
Now, who wrote this episode was Ernest Chambers and Jay Burton. And correct me if I'm wrong, David, but did you not have Ernest in your 60th anniversary special a little bit?
Yes, Ernie contributed some, and was good friends with Bill Persky, one of the other writers, producers. And Ernie's still alive and well in his 90s, out on the West Coast. And Ernie explained to me that Carl actually put him and Jay Burton together.
Oh,
and,
yeah.
And
because wasn't Jay Burton sort of like a gag kind of writer, famous for
he
that?
was, right?
Yeah.
One-liners.
Yeah.
I might be mistaken, but I think he might have written for Jack Benny and had one-liners
That
back
sounds
then.
like that could be, yeah.
Yes. And ultimately, Carl had Persky and Denoff, and he had Ernie Chambers and Jay Burton as writers. And in Ernie's words, Carl had to decide between them and us, and he wisely chose Persky and Denoff to be the producers and the writers of so many things. And of course, Persky and Denoff really were story consultants from early on once they joined. And Bill would say they pretty much supervised all of the scripts regardless of who did them.
Yeah. Then I assume that's so they all sort of stay in the same vein, stay true to the world, true
Right.
to the characters. And yeah, I think that really shows.
And Ernie and Jay, wrote a couple of other episodes too, which escape me now. I had that here in my notes, but I don't see them. But they did a handful of episodes. But Ernie remembers this Great Petrie Fortune with great fondness.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Couldn't remember the genesis of some of the specifics, but
I always wanted to know, like, I know they drew from their real life a lot for these kinds of scripts, but I'm struggling with this one. I'm like, what happened that they thought of this? I mean, it's fun to think about what could have transpired to give this idea. It's such a unique, very specific idea.
Yeah, you wonder if one of them inherited something from a relative, right? That was that was the fodder for this whole storyline, right? Yeah. So the episode opens up with Rob and Laura arriving at an attorney's office for the reading of Hezekiah's will.
Just gonna interrupt you one second. I also think it might be relevant to share with our listeners if Rob trips or goes around or doesn't on the Ottoman in this episode,
Yes.
which I believe in this one, he goes around the Ottoman. So
Oh,
I would like to someday do a, data points of like how many times he does that, how many times he does it. 'Cause it's kind of random, and I'd like to see those numbers. I just think it'd be fun.
and you know how that was decided, Abby?
Tell
What
me.
which opening? Well, the film editor got to choose.
Oh, how
So
cool.
they shot. There were actually once they shot the opening scene with Dick coming in the front door, there were actually three different versions. There was the
Mm-hmm.
one where he comes and goes over the Ottoman, second one where he sidesteps the Ottoman, and a third, very rarely used, where he sidesteps the Ottoman and then sort of scuffs his shoe or trips a little on the carpet itself.
I did not know that was rarely used. That it makes sense
Yeah,
with most of them I see. I think I usually make note that he's going around it, so that makes sense that that one's more rare. I don't see that one as often.
yeah. So Carl gave discretion to the film editor to decide which of the openings would be used. And they learned in later years that people watching the show were actually making wagers on which of the openings was going to be used, right, to see if they
Oh,
could make
funny.
a little money.
Oh,
They
that's
didn't
so
know
fun.
they didn't know that at the time. I mean, they were doing it for just interest, right?
Yeah,
I
yeah.
I, I think it's noteworthy to also discuss the fact that um, depending which opening, Earl Hagen's theme music is
Yeah.
subtly different too,
Yes.
right?
Mm-hmm.
If Rob hits the ground, we hear whoop boom, but
Oh,
if he
mm-hmm.
if he doesn't trip, it goes whoop, and there's sort of a gaping
Yes.
space there in the theme.
Yeah. Well, and also the music itself, besides the Ottoman, sound, the music itself changed throughout time. So we're in the fifth season here. So this is the last iteration of, I guess, are there two opening intros? There's the one with sort of like the bongo kind of thing at the
Right,
beginning, then the photos that are being thrown, and then there's
right.
this one as well. Or am I missing one in between there? Or are these the
No,
main two?
it was pretty much the photo opening, like you said, the file folder that with
Yeah.
photos do not bend, right? And they're strewn upon the desk. Um, fans should go watch that opening because
Yeah.
if you watch closely, you see a hand holding the folder, but there's also a second thumb on the top of that file folder, which had to
Really?
belong to someone else, unless somebody could really contort their right arm to bend it around and
Funny. I
hold the
have not
top.
noticed that. I'll have to look
So
at
I
that.
think, yeah, I think it's as if someone's handing the folder across the desk to someone who
Ah.
has it, and out come the photos.
Yeah, and then those great bongos. Whatever they
Yeah,
are. It's great.
which in retrospect, Earl Hagen said he had very little memory of ever doing that.
Really?
Right,
Oh, how
writing. In
interesting.
fact, he hated bongos. He said so. So the fact that he used them was a little bit strange or a little bit odd, I guess.
Funny, yeah. Oh, anyway, I digress. We can go
Yeah, no,
back
but
to
ultimately, Earl ended up with the big band sound, which was infamous for sure,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
Um,
All right, so we'll go back to the opening scene.
so the opening scene, right? Yeah. So we Rob and Laura arrive at the attorney's office. We mentioned at the top of the show today that the show was actually started to a draft that was written back in May, and interestingly, there was a scene before that.
Mm-hmm.
You want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, there's an opening scene where it's Rob and Laura and Buddy and Sally in the, I think, in the office, right? The Alan Brady Show office.
Yeah.
And it's there that they discuss it comes to light that they're going to the reading of the will. They're both nicely dressed, and they're kind of giving us the exposition through talking to Buddy and Sally about, where they're about to go. And then it heads into the lawyer scene. But really, when I'm looking at it now, it makes sense of why that was taken out. That scene is no longer, and they start right in the lawyer's office, and um, mostly all the information is revealed very quickly and very succinctly, with just Rob uh, interacting with the people that are there, and it's really all you needed. You didn't really need that opening scene.
The cutscene just tries to give the viewer the sense that, oh boy, this is a big fortune. What are you going to get? What are you going to do with all the money? Is
Mm.
sort of
Mm-hmm.
Buddy and Sally's take on it. But I would agree with you. Nothing is really lost by having that scene not there.
Yeah. Yeah.
I guess I'd love to know, did they actually shoot the scene
Right.
and the show ran long, so they cut it out, or in the end did it not make it to the final written script?
Yeah, it
And
makes
it
you
was
wonder. And I
axed.
also wonder, is this the only draft that was totally like, are there other drafts that were different, between then and the last one? Because there may well could have been, other iterations, which I find interesting.
The draft that we happen to get a copy of is from Ron Jacobs, who was, the associate producer, Danny Thomas's nephew, who was a big part of the show throughout its entire run, as well as many other programs thereafter. It is interesting when you get copies of the scripts from the show to see the iterations that they go through. And I suspect it probably went right up to filming day. It was finalized. Abby and I have discussed, how close to the written word were the lines actually delivered, right? How much
Yeah.
variance was tolerated or allowed by Carl or by Jerry as the director.
And looking in this script, I went through it with the episode that we know, and the changes were so numerous to most of the lines. There were too many to count. It had completely changed. Sometimes a small change, sometimes big changes. In terms of the words or whole lines left out, things like that.
We'll try to highlight those as we go, because it is interesting to say,
Yeah.
how would it have been different if X
Hmm.
line got in instead of others.
Absolutely.
So as we said, the scene opens in the lawyer's office, and we have quite a cast of characters that are there in the office.
These are all of our beloved character actors from that time. It's a beautiful little ensemble piece that I think really speaks to like how amazing these side characters were, these side actors. That had amazing talent then, and you can see it. Every single one of them is very developed and very funny and very, very good at acting.
Do you have a favorite of those characters?
I think it's is it Elvia or Elvia?
Elvia, I think. Yeah.
Elvia, yeah, who plays Lutherwella Detweiler. She might be one of my favorites. She's hysterical. I mean, they're all great. She might be my favorite though. What about you?
Yeah. So yeah, her arrogance in
Yeah.
thinking that Rob, who hasn't seen the uncle since he was 12 years old, right?
Yeah.
She's just appalled since she, I think, had dinner with him the night before or
Mm-hmm.
something, she
Mm-hmm.
says, right? Interestingly, Elvia played Herman Glimcher's mother in
That's
another Dick
right.
Van Dyke
That's
Show
right.
episode,
Yes.
but is what was well known for her appearances in Green Acres and Bewitched and Beverly Hillbillies and Petticoat Junction,
All
all
and
those
all
shows.
of these guys in this, I mean, all of these character actors, they're in just a plethora of shows in the 60s, sitcom after daytime drama, just all across the board. It's an amazing like group of work when you take it all into account, the talent that was in that one room.
Yeah. So, among them, right, the attorney Leland Ferguson, right, was Dan
Yeah, Dan
Tobin,
Tobin. Uh-huh.
who had a long stint on Perry Mason as like where Perry used to go and hang out with Paul and
Yes.
Della at the restaurant.
A funny thing about Dan in this scene, just while we're talking about him, uh, I found this on a recent visit to the episode. He is actually he's holding what is the will, the prop will, the piece of paper. But there is a point where he flips it down, and you can see that he has the sides of the script stuck right to the,
Ah,
and you can actually just see those sort of like lines of dialogue. So he's holding them in, in the papers, and you can actually tell when he's reading at the desk that yeah, he's consulting, his sort of his dialogue there on the side. That's very funny. I never got that before.
yeah. Well, I think in our world today, we were fortunate that the show ended up on high quality film, and we have
Mhm.
the brilliance of the Blu-ray discs. And there are things that we're able to see that no one ever anticipated anyone would see on a 1960s television set, right?
100%. And you can tell the sort of casual way he's got these. It really isn't thought that it was going to be seen at all. I mean, and I know I've never noticed it when I was younger. I know that it was invisible. So very cool.
Yeah. So I think he handles the rest of the group very, very
Yes.
nicely in terms of
Yes.
setting the tone that, first of all, his wife has a roast in the oven, so we're going to get this over with it
It's
and
great.
get out of there. But as we look around the rest of the room, we have Herb Vigran, who was Alfred Reinbeck,
He's great.
mostly probably best well known for his long tenure on The Adventures of Superman as
Okay.
a villain or as a crime person, right? Or as um, and then he was also on I Love Lucy and the Brady Bunch. and also in other Van Dyke episodes. He was a juror in One Angry Man Around
That's
the
right.
Table,
Mm-hmm.
and also in The Pen is Mightier Than the Mouth. So, and his character was good, particularly um, talking about how somebody was going to get stuck with what the 3D glasses,
Oh yeah,
right?
yeah.
Because of Uncle Hezekiah's
So great.
investment, and how much more money they would have had if had he died a year earlier, right? It would have
Yeah,
been 10 million instead of 1 million or something.
he's great. Speaking of the eyeglasses, I I read a book by Marta Kaufman one, or it wasn't by Marta Kaufman, it was about Marta Kaufman, who is the creator and writer of Friends, the TV series. And she mentioned that her favorite show is the Dick Van Dyke Show, and that she wanted to become a writer because of the show, and she took a lot of inspiration from the show. So I'm a huge Friends fan too. I've seen them all many times, know them all by heart. I pick up a lot of similarities from that show to this show almost every time I watch an episode. And this one in particular, with the 3D eyeglasses, there is an episode of Friends where Phoebe, who's sort of the, odd one of the bunch, her grandmother passes away and they go to the funeral. And it's never mentioned what they're for, but as they come in, Phoebe hands out these glasses to everybody, these 3D glasses that they're good. And I thought there's got to be something there because it's a funeral, which is similar to like a reading of the will, like someone has
Yeah.
passed and there's these 3D eyeglasses. I just thought it was so uh, I definitely was probably a nod in my opinion to that, whether conscious or unconscious.
Yeah, no, we should probably reach out and see if we can
Right?
get her to confirm that. That would be fun to know.
Yeah.
So as we look around the rest of the room, right, we have Amzie Strickland,
Which is great.
who was the maid, Rebecca.
Also in a lot of episodes of
Yeah,
everything.
7 different episodes of Van Dyke, from That's My Boy to The Masterpiece, bidding on The Thing against
Oh
the
yes,
Petries.
that's right. That's my boy. She's the nurse, right? That's
Right,
giving them. Yeah,
right.
she's great at that.
And The Case of the Pillow. She's
Yep, the wife of the.
Mr. Wiley's wife.
Yep.
She's also has the great part in Young Man with the Shoehorn, where she comes into the shoe store
Oh
where
yeah,
Rob
with
and
the
Buddy have
string.
taken over with
Yeah.
the string, and she just goes out and is still attached to the string and comes running back.
Any of the episodes where they had sort of uh like even the one where he takes the duck to the vet, or when they enter a room and they're entering this sort of like cast of characters, it's
Mhm.
like really really the show shines there, because you get all of these people in there and Rob's just having to sort of react, and it's a wonderful uh really funny bits.
And Amzie, of course, was on episodes of Dick Van Dyke, so clearly she was a presence on that Desilu Cahuenga lot, right?
Yes. Mhm.
That girl, Andy Griffith, and others.
Yeah.
So so we had Mr. Harlow, who we'll talk about later, as another guest star. He was the
Mm.
uh, not old misnotist, or
The new
how, right?
Misfits.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, the coin expert.
Right. But still in the office, we had Tiny Brower, right, who played the role of
Yes.
Ike Ballinger, who was the
Mhm.
guy who said he lifted people up, on his shoulders for the Macy's Day Parade. And in the end, Uncle Hezekiah rewarded him with giving him some money.
Yeah. Boy, was I smashed.
Yeah.
That's the best line.
Interestingly, though, the original name was not Ike Ballinger. It was Antonio Gabrielli.
I
Now,
think
I
that's so
have,
interesting. Yeah. Well,
yeah,
and they use a lot of Italian. Do you remember it reminded me of Tony Gagliardi from
yes,
the episode with Jerry and he's going to see the marriage counselor or whatever. I was like they like using these kind of like very Italian names for some reason.
yeah.
I don't know, it just came to their mind or what. But yeah, I find that why did they change it? It's like I don't know. I don't know. It's interesting.
Many times,
Yeah.
Carl used names of people he actually knew. So,
Ah. Yeah,
of
yeah.
course, we'll never know
Yeah.
unless Rob or one of the other kids
Right.
knows a Gabrielli. But thought it was just very interesting.
Very. And I wonder if it's like they had that name and then they cast this gentleman and then it was like he didn't fit the profile anymore, maybe. He didn't look Italian enough or whatever.
But
Yeah,
again,
very.
Tiny Brower in any number of episodes. He was in Where Did
Yes.
I Come From? He was the cab driver.
Yes.
You're
Great
Under
movie.
Arrest, The Bad Reception in Albany. He was in the bar
Mm-hmm.
when Rob was
Mm-hmm.
trying to watch the fashion show on television, right?
Yeah.
And I think he was drunk there too. So not only was he drunk at the Macy's Day Parade, he was drunk up in
My
Albany.
specialty on your resume. Plays
Yes.
drunk well.
Oh my gosh.
Now, do you think that this opening scene uh like what sometimes they they take the set of the living room or the bedroom or the office and they sort of change it, but sometimes you can still sort of see the skeleton of like
Yeah.
what the I couldn't tell where this one was filmed at. I mean, I assume maybe the office just because of the windows and things like that, but I didn't know if you'd noticed or not.
I'm not sure. I think, or the permanent set, as you were sitting in the audience looking at the stage, on the very far left had the Petrie bedroom. Next, next to that, to the right, was the living room. Next to that was the kitchen. And I don't know if fans realize, but beyond the right-hand wall of the kitchen was the office set. And the wall that was between the kitchen and the office actually was on a wheel, so that that wall could
Cool.
move, and make the
Yeah.
office a little bigger or the kitchen a little bigger, depending on what scene they were doing.
It's very cool.
So, but then there was also an area for like a set that was specific to the episode, which typically could have been next to the bleachers and facing the other direction. So people may not have been able to see that really well, depending on what the setup of the sound stage was.
Yeah.
We could pick Larry Matthews' brain someday and ask him if he recalls about that. But given the fact that the living room was used in other scenes in this, we know that the living room set was not redressed for the lawyer's office, so it could have been the writer's
that's true.
room.
Yes, that's
right.
true.
Or it could have been this external or other alternate set.
Yeah.
So
Well, and I often wonder too if there's changes to the the scenes from script to script. Is a lot of it too just sort of like logistics of like, well, do we want to make another scene in the office, or is that another
Yeah.
scene we have to dress? Maybe they just sort of like, let's just skip that part. But I guess I do it at the end of the episode. There is an office sort of the tag scene. So I don't know, but
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. So our intuition would tell us probably that was a separate
yeah.
set that they built just for this episode.
Mm-hmm.
Our last character at the reading of the will was Howard Wendell, who played the part of Ezra. And again, his long list of credits are amazing, including a total of 7 Dick Van Dyke Show appearances. He was the judge in One Angry Man.
Yeah, that's great.
He was a party guest at I'm No Henry Walden. He was in Stacy Petrie. He was in 100 Terrible Hours.
So he's the doctor, right? Is he the doctor there? Yeah.
Yeah. And then when Rob was running to be the councilman in the I Do Not Choose to Run episode, I wonder what fun it had to be for those character actors, because my guess is they had to all know each other from working on that lot and the number of episodes that they were on.
Had to have.
And my guess is by this stage in the life of the Dick Van Dyke Show, they probably said, oh, we have this scene where we need so-and-so people. And they probably said, oh, let's call Dan, let's call Amzie, let's call Tiny.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't know if it's like they had the same agent or if they just, they're part of a studio kind of system. I know that was how it kind of was before, sort of like a set of players. And
Ruth Birch was the casting agent back then, but and I think it was probably just a phone call. Are you available this week? Come on in. We have this episode that we're going to do.
Yeah, we need old man with white hair and
that
you'll fit, or we need cranky older lady. We'll call you in.
So anyway, Tobin Leland starts to read the will and tell everybody what they get, and the reactions I think are fabulous. But some insider stuff for fans of the show. One of the parties is given Calvada carbon and acre mining.
Some shares of Calvada carbon.
Correct.
I don't remember the number, but
so Calvada, of course, I hope fans know by now, Calvada was the production company that produced the Dick Van Dyke Show, and it was an amalgam of Carl Reiner and Sheldon Leonard and Danny Thomas and Dick Van Dyke's initials. So Calvada, Calvada, CA was Carl. The L was Leonard's contribution to the name, VA for Van Dyke, and DA for Danny Thomas. I don't know if you know this, Abby, but do you know what acre mining refers to? That's an inside joke too. So acre mining, ACRE, represented Annie, Carl, Rob, and Estelle.
That's cool.
Carl's family before the arrival of his son Lucas.
Hmm.
So Acre was one of Carl's early production companies. Again, thrown in as an inside
Yeah.
joke.
And throughout the show, I don't know about the acre mining, but the Calvada shows up many times.
Oh
I
yeah,
know in particular, if you can remember the episode where Rob gets the motorcycle and he, takes his joyride out to the hamburger stand and he
yeah.
parks it. Behind him there is a billboard or sign for Calvada. I think it's Calvada soda. I can't remember what it
Drink
is.
drink
Drink
Calvada. Yeah,
Calvada.
some sort
Yeah,
of drink.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
very cool.
And of course, there was the Big Max Calvada episode
Mm-hmm.
where Sheldon Leonard played the gangster trying to get
That's
his
true.
nephew Kenny into show business, or maybe get him out of show
Yeah.
business, depending how
Also,
you look at it.
also
I
one of my
guess.
favorites.
Yeah, maybe we'll talk about that soon.
That sounds good.
Yeah. Um, so yeah, just a little inside, joke about or inside story, I guess, which is kind of fun to know.
Then they get to the reading of the will for Rob, which is everyone has to leave the room, and they read him. He has a special movie that he's going to show Rob that's going to tell him the specifics of his inheritance. And the movie opens up, and it's Dick Van Dyke playing his own elderly uncle, which Dick Van Dyke has a history of playing old men. He must love this. He's great at it. His physicality is so suited for something like that. We all will know him from Mary Poppins. In 1964, he played Mr. Dawes. And then again, I think he played it in the 2018 version, returned
Right.
as the Mr. Dawes Jr., who was now elderly again.
Although Dick tells the story when he did the more recent version, he was 93, I think, at the time, and he
Oh,
said, "I don't understand." He said, "They put me in the makeup chair to make me up to look like an old man. What did they need to do?" I think uh, fans may also know, Dick was a computer
oh yeah, that's
enthusiast,
right.
um, and shot had a green screen over his garage out at his home. Um, I, you know, again, a fan's dream would be for Dick to reshoot that scene today
Yes.
of Uncle Hezekiah
Uh,
in his current number of years of 98. That would be
yeah.
great fun, and I think he would do it.
Yeah,
He would be great.
absolutely. And there were also other episodes where I can't think of a lot of them, but the one I could think of in particular is the one Buddy, Can You Spare a Job, when Rob is telling Laura that he got offered the Dan Howard show and he sort of does like an old man,
Yeah,
doddering old man type of imitation. So it seems like it was his kind of one of his go-to shticks.
yeah, yeah.
Cool.
But yeah, I don't know. I don't know. Maybe we could convince him to try to reshoot that scene up in
That'd
his
be great.
garage someday when he's bored and doesn't have anything
That'd
else
be
to do.
awesome.
Um, so yeah, so we watched the film, right? And the mystery is given to us of here's this roll top desk which has a wealth of riches.
Yes.
But we don't know what it is.
So this scene with the movie of Uncle Hezekiah singing Me and My Shadow" and giving the riddle of the desk. This opened up a whole. This is the one of many references in this episode that I did not know when I was a kid what it was, and went my whole life pretty much not knowing a lot of these things. But the first one being "Me and My Shadow," just culturally, it was it's a song from, I don't even know, the 20s, maybe. I think it was like Sinatra in 1925 or something like that. It's an old song, and at that time it was just part of the sort of like culture woven into things. No one really thought much about it. But as a kid, I had no idea what this was, and so it's very interesting that they used it because it's so relevant to everybody watching that they don't have to even really explain it. It's just there,
Well,
which is interesting.
what I think is intriguing is who had the idea that we will use this song and then we'll create a photo that has Abe Lincoln with the clock at 12. Yeah, I mean, that to me is just
It's the
ingenious.
specificity of this episode is what always it gets me. A lot of times, some sitcoms, there's a lot of the plots are a little formulaic, things like that. this is so unique and so specific. And I just wonder, yeah, like where did this idea come from? Was it the someone had a photo first and that triggered the idea for the episode? Or did someone have the song and the riddle idea and they put the two together? It's amazing to think of how that came together.
And I believe I asked Ernie when we talked, and he could not recall. But I mean, that would be,
Mm,
very fun to know, like the genesis
definitely.
of this whole thing. But we'll just
Mm-hmm.
have to use our imaginations, I guess. So yeah, so they watch the film. One of my favorite spots is he finishes the song, and the attorney says, the desk will be delivered to your home tonight, and we guess that's it, and it's not it, right? One more
One
time.
more time. I always love the line too, which I think is just some of Rob's little throwaway lines are the funniest, when he's or Dick Van Dyke's when he's singing and he smacks the it's before he's singing, he smacks the desk with his cane and the knob falls off
Yeah,
and he's like, I'll fix that before I go.
yeah.
you know. And then later on, this is I think his genius. Later on during the song, he's singing and dancing. He just sees the knob on the floor and kind of like stumbles and then like kicks it away. Like it's just like this two-part thing. He's just so good at those little tiny things that
But
are
interestingly,
just hysterical.
that the rap to the desk and the knob falling off were in the script, right? So
Isn't that
that
amazing?
was
Yeah.
written as part of the comedy, right?
It's like they knew what he was going to do with it.
Yes,
They could already picture it.
and Persky used to say, we would think, what could Dick do, right? And then we would
Yeah.
put it in,
Yeah.
and that was all. Dick does blah blah blah, and then they just let Dick run with it.
Yeah, they didn't have to describe it they just knew whatever he was going to do was going to be funny.
And I
Yeah.
suspect, the second reference that you talked about, kicking the thing, I'm sure that, that was
So
just
great.
Dick and all ad libbed as part of what was
Yeah.
doing. I mean, interestingly too, they did they did shoot that segment, right? Um,
Mm,
I
mhm.
think, was it really a film they were showing? I don't know, right? Or was it, did it give us the illusion of that they were showing
Yeah.
a
I do we
film?
don't ever do we see them we never see them in the same shot as the screen, I don't think.
We see
Right? Is it always sort of shot reverse
yeah, we
shot
see the
kind of?
back of the screen, I think, or
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
the edge. But yes, we don't see a shot from behind Rob and Laura, letting them see what's
Yeah.
on the screen. So my guess is, yeah, they shot Dick's scene separately, and we added the
Yeah.
sound of a movie projector running, and we turned one on and made it pretend like it was the film,
Yeah.
but
Absolutely.
no,
Uh-huh.
no real actual footage shot there. So,
Yeah.
all right, well, the desk finally arrives at 148 Bonnie Meadow Road.
And the whole thing kicks off.
Yeah, so that opening scene, like we said, was sort of like a little mini episode in my mind, because of the cast of characters and
It really is.
and then sort of the watching the movie is its own little vignette, if you will, and then
Mhm.
on we move to the house and the rest of what ensues, and Rob and Laura's dilemma and trying to figure out what is what
Yeah,
is this
and
disc that's supposed to be so wealthy. What's the wealth of riches in this desk?
yeah. And I think this starts a series of in the first scene within the lawyer's office, we see that Rob is just sort of he's not there, he's not feeling greedy, he's not feeling entitled to anything from this will. He's just sort of happy with what he gets. But I like Rob Petrie. He's not a flawless hero. But he's also not an anti-hero. He's very well-rounded hero, and that this sort of starts a repeating theme. There's a repeating theme in the whole series of Rob struggling with his conscience,
Yeah.
That he knows he wants to be a good guy. He knows what the best thing to do is, but there's this other sort of nagging reality of greed or I think he says this, I have to separate my conscience from my greed at
Mm-hmm.
some point in the episode. But I think at the beginning here, it already starts. He gets the desk, he's looking through it, he's remembering all the things that the other people got. He's frustrated and just starts this sort of like back and forth between his conscience and his, the good and bad of him sort of back and forth till one wins out in the end. Usually good, but
So, a number of items are stumbled upon as we open little cubbies of the desk and drawers and whatever. Um, I have
it's
to
so
I,
fun.
I have to say, my favorite item um, is the giant glass doorknob. I
Me
think
too.
the
Me too.
the delivery of
So
of Laura's line, right? Rob,
oh,
Rob,
it's the very biggest diamond I've ever seen.
right next to this glass doorknob. Yeah.
It's
Yeah,
genius.
the the delivery, the timing, and that glass doorknob was in fact even in the early draft of the script that we saw.
Yes, yeah. It must have been so much fun coming up with all these strange artifacts to have in this desk. I always have a dream, and I'm gonna do it one day. Leave it in the comments if you think this is a good or bad idea. I'm going to get a roll top desk, and I'm going to recreate every item in there and have the desk somewhere, you know, sort of set just like it was on the show. I just think that would be such a blast.
Where are you going to
do.
get the spleen pills?
I know. Antique spleen pills.
So
yeah, there's so many good things.
So we'll share with you listeners that some of the items that were actually ended up in the final episode were not what was originally intended. Originally discussed was that they found a matchbook cover that had Ty Cobb's picture on it. That never made it. So the famous baseball player. There were campaign buttons, but they weren't for Charles Evans Hughes and Thomas E. Dewey and whoever else, but they were for Alf Landon. And I didn't look up Alf Landon. Did you happen to look up Alf Landon?
I don't know. Let me see. I don't think I did.
Yeah, I don't know. Well,
again, this is a long list of things that even in their original form, even the campaign, but I that as a kid I just had no familiarity with, but just accepted them and and thought maybe one day it will make sense.
Yeah.
But Ty Cobb buttons. I did not look up Alpha. I don't know.
And then there was a leaflet about electricity and Thomas Edison or something that never made it.
It's like the only thing I can think of here is like maybe like those aren't very funny. You know, they're not that funny of items. And the things that they pick, the antique spleen pills and the, you know, they're all kind of humorous just as they are. And I wonder if that had something to do with it, you know.
So the one thing that did make it that I bet again was some banter involved between the writers and the cast was Laura picks up the little bag and she jiggles it and she's like, oh, they're jewels, right? And it turns out, they're just marbles. And Rob says, no, they're not marbles, they're purries.
They're all purries.
And again, that you know, I'm in my early 60s. I know what a purrie is only because of my dad, who had marbles when I was a young kid and told me what purries are. But again, that was a sort of a very generational specific point in time sort of thing.
I laugh because the majority of my childhood, this was my reference point for life as an adult. And I often would, for instance, I thought payphones cost a dime because on the Dick Van Dyke Show, they're a dime. And so I would go to the mall and say, I got to call my mom and get out a dime and be perplexed why this wasn't working. Like this was my reference point for all of life. So some of these things is just too funny. You know, it just brings me back to those things of like, I did not know what any stuff was. Really didn't.
Well, as we know, they eventually stumble upon what looks like Aladdin's lamp full of coins. But originally,
which was not in the original
correct,
script, right?
That was not in there. It was originally a metal strongbox, and again, somebody's inventive thinking said, if we have it be Aladdin's lamp, we can use it, you know, near the end of the episode where they're still trying to figure out what the wealth of riches is, and Rob gets caught sort of rubbing the lamp, hoping that he's going to get his 3 wishes or whatever.
Well, and I think that's another nod to, I always say the reason I love the Dick Van Dyke Show is the humor comes from the characters. It does not come from the lines. It does not come from the jokes. It comes from the characters. I use this example all the time when I talk to people about this, but there's a scene where he goes in the police station in the other, I think it's the long title, The Trumpets, you know, where he goes to the police station to identify somebody. And when he walks in, you see a police uniform hanging on a hook. And you just know the audience starts to laugh as soon as he even nears it because they know it's Rob Petrie. He's going to try that thing on. You know, like he's going to try it on and he's going to get caught trying it on. And that's where, and you're anticipating it the whole time. And sure enough, of course, he tries it on. I think the lamp is similar. Like, okay, given this situation, what would Rob Petrie do? He's going to try to rub that lamp. It's just like, so I think it really, really plays into that so much. It's that character element of that.
And the brilliance of Laura subtly sneaking out behind him, seeing it all happening and just waiting and waiting. And then in her low voice, just to scare the crap out of him.
She knows he's going to do it too.
Scare the crap out of him. So yes. So they ultimately, you know, open the lamp and dump out all the coins. And that's where we see, you know, Forrest Lewis appear as Mr. Harlow, the coin guy, to give him his knowledge about it. And we got Buffalo on the mound and Buffalo on the plane and everything that goes in again.
And you might know that Forrest Lewis, if you're listening, you might know him mostly as, I always remember him as Mac the Night Watchman
great.
in
Yes.
the script switching episode. He's great in that.
Yeah, where he catches them smashing the transom window over Alan's office.
Well, just look around. There's a lot of stuff.
Yeah. Oh, you just wanted to get in the outer office. So I got the key. Oh my gosh. Yeah, great. Two great roles there. One of my again in the script, Rob's looking at the coins, trying to figure out, what coins are in here, and Rob says, "Oh, look at this one from 1899," and Buddy says, "Yeah, give you a penny, you got $19." And again, that's the Buddy Sorrell, Maury Amsterdam type of humor that they wrote so well for.
And it's just, everyone gets to shine, here. It's just great. I mean, Sally does a little song bit, earlier. And then, of course, the way that the Sally and Buddy are bantering with Mr. Harlow, I mean, it's hysterical. They're just, they love, the two of them, they love somebody who's not very funny.
Yes.
Because it's almost like flummoxes them. Like, how is this person so square?
Yeah.
And it's just such a great little back and forth.
And Harlow,
we've had that a few times.
Says, you're about Buddy. Oh, you're kind of a funny man, or you have a funny person, or a funny persona about you, or whatever.
Yeah, it's funny. I actually had a buffalo head nickel as a kid. My dad got it for me from an antique shop, and I still have it to this day. And I have it because of the show. I just, as a kid, I thought, oh, I have this buffalo head nickel. This is amazing. I did not have a matching set.
Is it on the mound or on the plane?
I don't know. I have to look now. I think it might be on the mound. But yeah, I always kept it thinking like, oh, somehow I had a piece of the show or something, that I had this, like, not knowing there, of course, a zillion of them in circulation. But
well, and I guess
special.
Again, ignorance here, but I wonder if what the premise in the episode of to have this matching set actually was something that was worth some money. I don't know.
Yeah. Very well could have been, yeah.
We should research that and see if there's
I'm curious.
any truth.
Are there actually matching sets? Yeah. Were they worth anything?
Or was that all made up and we're led to believe that that's the way that it was?
Right.
So we ultimately come to resolution and conclusion as Rob, the character of Rob, as you say, he's back and forth. At first, like you said, the very beginning of the episode, he doesn't think he deserves anything. And then as it goes on, other people get things, and he's torn between, well, I want something and I really don't deserve something. But he finally comes to the realization that, it's not the dollar value of these things necessarily that Uncle Hezekiah wanted me to have. It was things that were important to him. And that sentiment, I think, can still hold true to each of us today. I mean,
maybe more than ever, I think.
Yeah, I think of some heirlooms that I have of my family members who are gone now, and the value and the meaning that they have to you.
Yeah, like I said, I don't know if it was chicken or egg, but I have the same experience that I'm extremely sentimental and extremely value objects that were owned by those that have passed that I've loved and that were there's no monetary value to any of them. It's all sentimental, and I really vibe
the
with
uniqueness there would be the fact that relative touched those items at some point in their life. Their essence of them is there.
Absolutely, yeah.
So finally, Rob's just sort of looking at the picture of his Uncle Hezekiah as a baby and sort of talks through the scenario of what he sees, and suddenly it dawns on him, and he reveals to Laura, right?
All the clues are in the song and in the photograph.
Yeah, it's the real actor, Massey.
The real Raymond Massey. Again, another reference I didn't know. If anyone doesn't know, Raymond Massey was an actor in the 40s who portrayed Abraham Lincoln in a number of things. And so, of course, that makes the joke much funnier when you understand it. But as a kid, Matthew Brady, that was something they also introduced that I wasn't familiar with. He, of course, was the Union, Civil War photographer who was, I think they call him the father of photojournalism or something like, just sort of created that whole space.
We sort of skipped over, they found the war bond, but from the wrong side.
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
That was also a bit of creativity, and Rob whistling.
The whistling Dixie. Yeah, that's great. So funny.
Oh my gosh. So yeah.
Perfect delivery.
So again, they decide that this precious heirloom can't be kept, but it's not going to be sold or given away, right? We're going to put it on display in a museum from the collection of Mr. and Mrs. Robert Petrie.
Yeah, and it's just it's lovely when a character is neither too flawed or too perfect. You know, he's a great it's a great lesson of like, it's not who you are, it's the choices you make, kind of. You know, it's like anybody gonna have greed and feel that way, but in the end, it's the choice to not do those things is what matters. And he always exemplifies that. And I think that was a good thing for me as a young person watching the show. I got a lot out of it, out of that aspect of the show for me.
Of course, we moved to the tag scene. We got to end with a little bit of humor. Buddy wants to borrow that Abraham Lincoln photo, and Rob says it's in the museum, Buddy. And he said, "Well, that's not the Abe Lincoln I want. I want the $5 bill kind."
And then, of course, you have Sally's Aunt Agnes line. Which, do we know the origin of the Aunt Agnes?
I don't.
Quotations.
No.
I really wish I knew that.
The obscure sentiments, thoughts,
nonsensical sentiments
that make no sense. Yeah. What did you write down what Aunt Agnes said here? I can't remember.
Oh shoot, I didn't.
Oh, we'll have to go back and.
I wish I'd like to go back and see what it is. Just curious.
But you know, again, the final thought there is, well, you know, Buddy, I'll let you borrow the $5, but just as long as you remember that it's from the Rob Petrie collection, you owe it back to me. So
yes.
Oh my gosh. Great. Overall, a great episode. I think, like we said, different segments, each of which has its own fun moments and memorable moments. You know, one of my favorites. I do have a glass doorknob here on my shelf in memory of the episode, and people are like, "What?" You know, my office here has various items of Dick Van Dyke related things, and people will say, well, where do you have that glass doorknob for? And you try to explain it, and if they're not a fan and they haven't seen the episode, it doesn't matter how much you explain it, it's sort of lost on them.
Do you know about the Bunny Club key? I meant to ask you that. We were talking about that portion of the episode. Does it have to do with the Playboy Bunny?
I think like, that's sort of like the reference to the Playboy Mansion, right? Did you have a bunny key?
Ah, I see. Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
And in the earlier drafts of the script, apparently there were posters of different girls too that Uncle Hezekiah had. Yeah, that didn't make it to the final edit too. So
yeah, I agree. This is just one of my favorite episodes. It's got all the wonderful character actors, all the wonderful points of Rob, and just he gets to do his physical comedy with Uncle Hezekiah. There's so much for everybody to do, and just really shines. And it's also, I enjoy episodes where most of the action takes place in one room. I tend to think those are some of my favorites, and this being like they're mostly in the living room with this one desk, and all the comedy has to happen around it, and that is a testament to great acting. They can't rely on set changes and pieces. It's just them. It's almost like watching a small play, like a one-act play or something.
Right.
I really, really like those kinds of episodes.
Well, and again, most fans probably know the Dick Van Dyke Show was shot like a play from beginning to end with a live studio audience. So,
and with the 3-camera that Desi Lou.
Yep, three camera setup. And wouldn't it have been fun to have been sitting in that audience to some night on a Tuesday night when they filmed to see those episodes? That would have been great. So, to you listeners, we hope you've enjoyed our ride here as we take a look back at one of our favorite episodes. Yeah, let us know what you think in the comments below, and we'll see you again soon with another. If you have a particular episode that you'd like us to discuss, by all means, let us know.
Definitely.
I know we'll be talking about the Walnut episode at some point. Yes. One of probably my most favorite episode of the show.
Yeah.
But for now, I'm David.
I'm Abby. Thanks for tripping over the Ottoman with us, and we'll see you next time.